Hi, it's Miss Parrott, and welcome to video number 17. And today we are going to focus on the Renaissance. And what you see, I am in Florence, Italy, and the reason for that is that Florence is the kind of the cradle of the Renaissance or birthplace of the Renaissance, and we will be getting to that shortly. Just to review our timeline, so as sixth graders, you learned about the Greek and Roman civilizations, the ancient era, or classical, and then your last unit, just this past month, has been the Middle Ages, medieval Europe. And then now we are talking about the Renaissance, which means a rebirth of those classical ideas and a rebirth of learning and an enlightenment. So today we're going to focus, first of all, on the artistic aspects. And so there was classical, medieval, and Renaissance art. And this is actually one of your options for your time book, so this might be helpful. So here's a little chart for you of how to examine the three art styles. So think about how each artwork, why it was created, and the style characteristics of each. So have a look at this chart for just a little bit, and then we're going to talk about some of the aspects. So I'll just going to focus on the Renaissance, and one of the aspects is humanism, and that's something we're going to talk about in just a little bit, but also bringing back that classical, what's called classical antiquity. So a style that has three-dimensional figures, is very detailed with depth and perspective. So that's something to think about. And as you look at these three images, you can kind of tell which one is the artwork of the Renaissance. And then look at these four images, and obviously you can see one one is the Mona Lisa by Leonardo da Vinci, and that is the one that was created during the Renaissance. And you can see that difference because the other three are from the medieval period. So that's hopefully one thing that will help you with your time book options, and that information is in the first chapter that is attached in Google Classroom. Next, we're going to talk about some major causes for the Renaissance. In particular, we're talking about, at this time, Europe did not look like it does today. This is what it looked like. It was in city-states, and those city-states traded with each other, and there was also trade with when the Crusaders went to Jerusalem. So the first cause, as you can see there, is merchants and Crusaders brought back goods and ideas from the East, and part of that was classical learning. And then you see the second cause, the Roman Catholic Church kept knowledge of ancient times alive through documents that survived from the classical period, so they're able to be looked at again. Because we're not just talking about a revival of art, we're talking about also a revival of that thought and like philosophy, scholarly learning from the classical period. The third cause, Europeans also read classical works that came by the way of Muslim scholars. So all of this led to rediscovery of the Greek and Roman cultures. And you see that through art, but you also see it through the thinking, the inventions, the writing of the Renaissance. So if we look at this image here and what were some of the major causes of the Renaissance, hopefully you would be able to decide that it was the Crusades, Mongol conquests, and Marco Polo because of the importance of trade. Now, going back to those Italian city-states, you can see that you have Florence, Italy is kind of right in the middle, in the center of all of this, and so it's known as the cradle of the Renaissance. And in Florence, well, why was it Florence and not anywhere else? There were many great lines of thinking that were happening in Florence at this time, and it is all outlined in your the second chapter that is attached to Google Classroom, because it talks about architecture and engineering. You had science and math that were being very much encouraged during this time, and you might wonder, well, how were they able to do all of this? And a big reason, and you'll see here in this image of the Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci, is that you had wealthy families, sponsors or patrons, who were able to pay artists, pay engineers, architects to create masterpieces. And also even the church was, paying for, to have like Michelangelo painting the Sistine Chapel. So they were encouraged in Florence and elsewhere to, do this art by being paid to do so. Okay, so I mentioned humanists earlier, and so here is an image of that includes some ideas of humanists. Now, there's only 4 that are actually humanist ideas, and so think about which 4 would be the humanist ideas in this image. So, and this is one of your options for the time book, so this might prove to be helpful to you. So the 4 big ideas of humanists were individual achievement were of the utmost importance. Daily life and faith can be together, can coexist. People have the ability to control their lives, so it's not like God is controlling you. You have that control individually. And nothing is above questioning, which is kind of a big one, that you can question authority, you can question religion, you can question what somebody thinks, you can question what somebody is telling you to do. So that was a big change from the Middle Ages. So hopefully that is helpful to you, because humanist thought was a strong idea during the Renaissance. And then finally, there were many figures, very famous people that we know today, and maybe some that you're not as aware of. So in the leading figures of the Renaissance chapter that is attached to Google Classroom, there are numerous, and it doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of the figures during the Renaissance who excelled in art, in architecture, in writing, in philosophy. And so here is just a very, very abbreviated list, because one of the options for your time book is to choose one leading figure of the Renaissance and be able to, tell a little bit about their accomplishments and that sort of thing. So here is a list, and see if you can match the person with the big thing that they accomplished. So some of these figures you're probably familiar with, like Michelangelo, who was very renowned for his artwork and his sculpture. You probably know Leonardo da Vinci, who wasn't just an artist, but a scientist and inventor as well. And some of these you might be like, oh, Donatello, wasn't he one of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Well, those turtles were named after Raphael, Donatello, Michelangelo. They're all, yes, Renaissance artists, and Donatello was a sculptor. And as you know, Florence is the Italian city-state that was a cultural center during the Renaissance. And you might not know, Machiavelli was a historian, writer, who wrote The Prince, with his thoughts on how, government should be. And Dante Alighieri is the writer of the Divine Comedy and a great Italian author of the Renaissance. And finally, at the bottom, secular. So we're getting to away from just believing in religious ideas, but also secular ones. And that's where the humanists come in as well. So you don't have to choose a person that's from this list necessarily. There are many more in the chapter that you can choose from. I know we're kind of in our winding down in our last week or so. So please email me if you have any questions about the time book or anything else. And in a couple days, we'll have a video about the Reformation, and hopefully these will help you to be successful as you wrap things up for your 7th grade year. So I will talk to you at office hours, and I hope you are doing well.